This is the fourth week that we have been focusing on the teachings of Jesus from the 5th chapter of Matthew, which we usually call the Sermon on the Mount. And these words of Jesus are both beautiful and challenging. They require a great deal of us, so that when people who are not accustomed to them hear these words, or perhaps even when we hear them ourselves, we think they are just downright foolish. Take, for example, today's gospel lesson. In today's gospel lesson, Jesus points out that in days of old, retaliation was acceptable as long as it was equal. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. In other words, I get to hurt you as much as you have hurt me. Well, we think that sounds fair. But Jesus says, no. I expect more of you. Or as I told the children, I expect you to do extra. I expect you to love more. I expect you to forgive more. I expect you to accept more. And so, we say, that sounds downright foolish. And the question is, will we choose to be fools? Will we? Oh, come on, we say, really, it sounds so good, but who's really going to pray for somebody who has persecuted them? And who really is going to go the extra mile? Who's really going to give two when someone asks for one? Who's really going to forgive someone who has hurt them? Come on. But let me assure you that it does happen. It happens among us. And today, one of our members, Paula Gressop, is going to tell how it happened to her and her family. She's going to tell what I'm calling her foolish story. But first, a little bit of background. Many of us knew Paula's older sister, Gail. Gail participated in our Stephen ministry training and also supported her niece and nephew, Logan and Lauren, during their confirmation process here at Faith Lutheran Church. In fact, those were the days when we had confirmation every Wednesday night. And because Paula was working, Gail brought Logan and also brought treats for the class every Wednesday. They were so spoiled by Gail. They really liked Logan's aunt. Well, sadly, about a year ago, Gail was killed in a tragic accident. She was driving to work in the middle of the week on I-77 going north, and someone driving a panel truck, a moving truck, going south, lost control of their vehicle, crossed the median airborne, and landed on Gail's car. And Gail died. It was an overwhelming event for many of us, not only because we knew and loved Gail, but because of the circumstances of her death. It was just so out of control. It was indeed a sad and a shocking reality. And now I'm going to invite Paula to come forward to tell her foolish story.
Gail was the oldest of 5 children. She was not only a sister to us, but a best friend and mother figure. We were very young when our parents divorced, and Gail became our strength. She was there for each and every one of us, unconditionally. Even when the nieces and nephew came along, Gail became their go-to person as well. Never in a million years did I ever think I would get the horrific call on April 23rd, 2013. I remember the caller telling me Gail Bradley had been in an accident and life-flighted to Metro in Cleveland. I remember driving and thinking I needed to go and pick Gail up and bring her home. Once I reached the hospital, my brother told me he had bad news. Gail did not make it. As you can imagine, we were all in a state of shock. We were told a moving truck lost control and landed on Gail's car. A few days later, we were called and told the details of my sister's accident. There was a 22-year-old driving at the speed of 88 miles per hour. He was driving without a license or insurance, weaving in and out of traffic, and as a result, he cut off the moving truck, sending him out of control, and he landed on my sister's car. I was so angry that day. It was bad enough thinking the accident happened one way, and then to find out about the negligence in detail. I had a really rough day. I remember crying in the rage of anger. I was so mad that such negligence took my sister's life. I remember thinking that the anger is one of the stages of grief. However, I didn't like being with myself on that day. It was an ugly place to be. I had to get it together. Nothing would bring Gail back. Gail would not want me to destroy my life and live it in anger. Thankfully, the anger lasted only one day. I remember thinking, check, the stage of grief, anger, done. Then the time came when we were told there would be a trial to convict Anthony, the reckless driver. During the next 7 months, my thoughts became consumed with that day. I kept asking the attorney, do I have to talk? They reassured me I did not. However, I played in my head how that day would go, what would happen. What would I say even though I did not want to speak? I kept thinking, Anthony is someone's son, brother. He did not set out to take Gail's life that day. How can his mother deal with this? How can she watch her son being taken off to jail? It was an accident. 1 week before trial, I woke very early and started typing my thoughts. I pushed the send button and told the attorney I wanted to read this at the trial. I knew God was with me that morning. I had to speak. I had to get off my chest what I had been thinking for months. The attorney responded, yes, written perfectly, you may read. The day of the trial, the attorney drove me to court. My brother and cousin met us there. My cousin wanted to speak and I encouraged her to do so. The attorney held my hand as we sat down in court. There were 3 TV stations videotaping. Anthony turned and looked at me and we made eye contact. I felt such sadness for Anthony. This is what I read at the sentencing. My sister is Gail Bradley. Gail is no longer with us. I need to be her voice, and Gail lived by 5 agreements. 1, be impeccable with your words. 2, don't take anything personally. 3, don't make assumptions. 4, always do your best. And 5, be skeptical but learn to listen. With that being said, I want everyone to know this tragedy is a lose-lose for each and every one of us here today. My heart goes out to all of you. Life is about choices. The choices that were made on April 23rd and prior to the tragedy were, in my opinion, very bad choices. Gail was an upstanding citizen driving to work just like any other day. Gail always looked at any possible situation and what could go wrong and avoid harm at all costs. In fact, she would pound it into our heads so often that it even became a joke. We would tell her, yes, Gail, we know. I still shake my head at this tragedy, still can't imagine how this could happen. It was so random. She was the chosen one. The pain is unbearable. Words can't explain. Every day I say, I want you back. Come back to us. I know we have to have grace and carry on, I will always miss my sister. There will always be a hole in my heart. I look at my brothers and mom and family and friends and see nothing but sadness. However, we need to always remember Gail made the world a better place. We were all blessed to have Gail in our lives. She taught us an overindulging kindness and love. My cousin looked at Anthony and told him Gail would have forgiven him, and she hoped that he would make good out of his life when he got out of prison. We walked back to our seats and I handed Anthony tissues. He was crying through the entire trial. His mother was brought into court to speak, and so did he. She sat behind us when she was done. I reached back and held her hand. When he was sentenced to 8 years in prison, it took my brother's breath away. He reached back to the mother. When the trial was over, a man approached me. He was the boy's grandmother's minister. He commended me for the forgiveness I had shown and said if there were more people like me in the world would be a better place. As we walked out, I spoke with Anthony's mom, letting her know we would be praying for her son and her family. I told her I did not hate her son. I gave her what I had written and read in court. After that, a police officer approached me and told me, he said he had never seen anyone approach the defendant or the family of the defendant. As I noted, that Anthony is a person and that it was an accident. The police officer had tears streaming down his face. I hugged him and gave him comfort. I walked away feeling so proud of my family, so proud we had the dignity and grace for Gail. I truly felt it was time to heal.
In the eyes of many people, what Paula and her family did in response to Gail's death and obvious negligence was foolish. And yet she stands by it. So much so that she was willing to stand up in front of you and in front of the congregation at the earlier service to tell her story, even though that's way beyond her comfort zone. Why? It's because in forgiveness, she and her family have found healing. If they had gone to court and had spoken words of hatred and retribution and revenge, that healing would not be happening. Instead, they are, in a sense, praying for the one who persecuted them and loving their enemy. And that's just the point, isn't it? Jesus doesn't tell us to do these things that we've talked about for 4 weeks that seem so foolish in order to discourage us. He tells us to live in this way because it's what's best for us and for the world. And we're not in it alone. We have each other, and we have the power of the Holy Spirit to help us to strive toward fulfilling the greatest of all oxymorons. That is to be foolish and perfect. We strive for it. We'll never get there. But we strive for foolish perfection. And so I ask us again, will we choose to be fools? It's a choice. Will we choose to be fools? Paula did.